Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast in partnership with Vertical Valor magazine. In this two-part series, we go international and speak with Hangar Z co-hosts and international instructors Harald Brink, who is the Chief TFO from the Dutch National Police, and Lieutenant Clay Lacey from Texas DPS. We also talk with Jon Duke, a UK military aviation veteran and contributor to Vertical and Vertical Valor magazines.
And as they're moving to contact, they go inadvertent IMC, and that crew cites the training on helping them get through that. Some interesting notes on that, talking about auditory exclusion and stress. The pilot's Apple Watch showed a heart rate up in the 170s during the initial onset of this. So those guys did a great thing and they survived it. And we've got the ICS audio of it. So I try to share it in my classes. But again, this is a unique thing, I think, to the U.S. This isn't, it seems like when I visit with my European partners, they're generally all running big twins with two pilots up front, and a TFO or two TFOs. I've heard a payload operator and a TFO in the back. So this might be something that's a little more near and dear on the U.S. side.
During this conversation, we're going beyond borders to examine the common ground and critical differences in air support operations between the U.S. and Europe. From suspect behavior that looks the same in Dallas as it does in The Hague, to the training that makes their agency operations effective and efficient. We talk about the intense task saturation of tactical flight officers, a job we argue is the most difficult in all of law enforcement when done correctly. The crucial safety threshold of simulator training, and the tactical importance of flying single-engine helicopters versus the big twins. Check out the article Aerial Pursuit Across Continents by Jon Duke, who joins us to help cross-pollinate these incredible conversations into print. You can find the article in the fall issue of Vertical Valor magazine. Visit verticalmag.com to read more about this collaboration that came to life alongside this recording. Thank you to our sponsors, Precision Aviation Group, Centum, and Bell.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
Hey, welcome to the Hangar Z podcast. I'm your host, John Gray. Have a really cool lineup in store for today for this conversation. This is a conversation that we've talked about at length. We've had our guests who are also co-hosts and Hangar Z family, Clay Lacey and Harald Brink, on the podcast many times, and we've spoken about kind of our individual and collective ideas that surround law enforcement aviation, not just in the U.S. and Europe, but worldwide. And I think what we've found is there's more similarities than anything else between the cultures we share and the jobs we do. We talk about suspect behavior and how similar it is in the U.S. as to anywhere in the world. And we'll get into some of that stuff. So excited to have this conversation. Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Harald, for joining us. And Jon Duke, he's also with us. He's a contributor to Vertical Valor and Vertical Magazine. Been on the podcast before and honored to have him here today with us. Jon, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, cool to have you on. And the idea behind bringing you on is, we're trying to cross-pollinate as much as we can the content that's generated between the Hangar Z podcast, the Vertical Valor magazine, Vertical Magazine. So having you in here as a contributor will be really cool to be able to take some of these conversations and generate some articles that are kind of based on the conversation we're having today.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. I'm always aware of when I go out and write how much gets left on the cutting room floor, and I imagine it's the same for the podcast. So it's really cool to be able to get behind the scenes and get the benefit of that. So thank you. Yeah,
a lot of the podcasts, well, just about every podcast really, there's 4 or 5 subset of stories that we wade through, and it'd be really cool to kind of highlight some of those stories in a way that we haven't done before by having you a part of the conversation and kind of dissecting the conversation through an article that you're writing. So if we could, let's just start off with some introductions. Jon, I've already kind of briefly introduced you, but if you could just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and what you do for Vertical.
Sure thing. Yeah. So as you said, I'm a contributing writer for Vertical and Vertical Valor. I've been privileged to do that for the last 10 years. Started doing that back when I was a helicopter pilot with the Royal Navy. and I have a background in military aviation that goes back 20-something years. Started as an air traffic controller, finished up as a flying instructor via search and rescue and surveillance flying in helicopters. And then when I left, I went to work in the software industry. And so I've been working for about the last 2 years for a company called Airbox Systems that make portable mission systems for emergency responders. And that includes an aviation component as well. So I kind of feel like I still have a foot in the aviation camp, and I still fly when I can.
Yeah, for sure. What you guys are doing at Airbox is pretty cool. It's similar to what Clay is dealing with through ATAC at his agency. And so it'll be cool to talk about that as well as we go through. But Clay, welcome back as a guest / co-host. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. My name's Clay Lacey. I'm a lieutenant pilot with the Texas Department of Public Safety, Aviation Operations Division based out of Dallas. Been in law enforcement here in Texas for about 30 years. I've spent 25 years flying for Texas DPS, started on the TFO side and now moved over into the pilot side, but still sit over there when I can in the left seat to do a little TFO work. And then I'm also blessed to be able to do some training around the world on some of these topics. So happy to be here.
Yeah, that's what's unique about having you and Harold as guests and co-hosts in this recording is not only have you guys been around the world traveling and seeing the work that's being done around the world, but you've actually instructed around the world. So we've had a lot of unique conversations that'll kind of give us some insights as to what we're talking about. Harold, sir, welcome back.
Sir, man, you make me old. You make me feeling very old. I think I'm the oldest one. So, Harald Brink, working with the Netherlands Police since 1992. Went to the academy in 1992, 1993. Finished and started working in the city of The Hague. In patrol. In 1998, I changed to the federal police, did a patrol there, did some task forces, and ended up in 2009 as a TFO aviation unit. I'm still there. So I think it's already 34 years in law enforcement now. So,
wow.
Met Clay, met Jack, with trainings, with courses worldwide. That's where I met you, Jon. Became an instructor in 2012 after visiting Jack's LAPD aircrew course. That was some kind of thing they did in my unit at the time. You went to Los Angeles, did training. They think you were instructor material. You became an instructor. So was promoted to lieutenant 5 years ago, and now I'm the chief TFO instructor. For me,
that's why I have to call you sir.
No, don't do it. Make me old.
Talk a little bit about the training that you do through tactical flying and some of the insight that's given you over the course of your training career.
For tactical flying, Nick asked me to do the European part, so we try to see if there is a need, and I think there is a need in Europe for more training, because I think we come to the topic about training and how the different European units do it. I think Clay had some insights last month in Spain, and also in my unit, talking to people from different European units, and you see there is a big difference in training in the way how they teach and instruct train their TFOs. In my unit, it's pretty solid. I think it's a little bit like what the LAPD does and the Texas DPS does. So we have a lot of dedicated training hours, a lot of dedicated training day, night, trooping, offshore. We also use the simulator, the full flight simulator. When the pilots do their operational proficiency check, the TFOs go with them and also participate in that check. And we train the TFOs on the AW139, also in the virtual reality simulator, once a year, at Priority 1 in Bordeaux, in France.
Clay, you guys are doing something similar, right, with your TFOs as it relates to emergency procedures and that kind of side of the training house?
Yeah, we're big fans of our TFOs having a very deep knowledge base on the pilot side of the aircraft. We have found that, if both, U.S. law enforcement is what we're talking about here. So generally, two guys or two gals sitting in the front seat of a single engine turbine, that's what you're going to find mostly here. We find that the more each one of them know about the other job, the safer the operation and the more effective. So the more that the TFO understands emergency procedures, ins and outs, double IMC specifically, the safer they are. So we do train that both in the basic TFO training program, and then our TFOs, like Harald said, they do a great job with this as well. They go with the pilots. For example, we may dry lease the simulator at Airbus, and we put one of our training lieutenants in the back, and we put a TFO and a pilot in the front, and kind of work through some of those issues.
Yeah, that's huge. I think the availability of agencies to do that here in the U.S. is critical. But I think what happens most often is from either a resource standpoint, it's not very often that agencies can spend the money to send not only a pilot but a TFO out to training, or from a staffing standpoint. A lot of times agencies may have the availability funding wise, but just can't send folks out. So we're looking at some unique solutions. LAPD has just recently adopted the simulator in-house, which is great through Loft. So I think that will change things as we move forward, as the availability of those types of simulators grow. So excited to see what that does for not only the safety threshold that allows for, but the actual tactile training part of it. So that'll be interesting to see as we go forward. Harald, are you guys seeing any of the Loft style simulators emerge in Europe?
The thing is, it's one of the differences Jon asked about. I think 99% of all units have a TFO in the back seat instead of in the front seat, like in the US. So there's a different thing. So CRM is a big thing. So we train a lot of CRM because you're not seeing each other face to face because you're sitting behind each other. So it takes a lot of training to understand and to hear intonation of voices, what it means and what happens. We go every 3 years to the Netherlands Air Force to CRM training, recurrency training. It's interesting. It's 2 days and they come with examples and you have to work them out. I think that's a big part. But it's also, I think it's also a similarity because Clay's unit does the same. And I think the majority of bigger air support units do the same. The training in simulators, I think it's easier for us because we are federal. So that's one of the differences Jon also mentioned in his letter. It's about being state or federal or being like from a small city, and you have to lately sometimes beg for your money. That's not really an issue with us. We have money issues, of course. Everybody has money issues, but not that we cannot afford to train like the way we train out. So it's not training on a job, but it's dedicated training hours, dedicated flying hours, and dedicated simulator hours.
It's a really interesting point that you raise about funding, right? Because I feel like a lot of the benefits that you get from, particularly from what Clay was talking about, having that cross-pollination or that understanding between the seats about different crew members doing, different crew members' understanding of the different roles. It's super difficult in my experience. So we had a similar thing in the Navy. We would train our observers, they were called then, which I always thought that was an unfortunate title, but they would be trained, because we were single pilot, they would train to occupy the left-hand seat during takeoff and landing and during particular emergencies. But it's really, really difficult, or at least I found it really, really difficult to quantify the benefit of that training in a way that made it clear to the budget holder that it would be worth investing specifically in that training. CRM, I think, is a slightly different case because it's mandated and it kind of has a regulatory framework around it. I'm super interested to hear, Clay, whether you have thoughts on that.
Well, I can just tell you personal experience, anecdotal evidence. When we first started using the simulator, we sent our pilots over there. And, for those that aren't familiar with the U.S., you may have a ATP certified, instrument flight rated pilot. But most of us, unlike Harald, are operating a single engine turbine helicopter that may be instrument equipped, but it's not certified. So we don't make it a habit of being out in those conditions. And certainly any unplanned event, whether you're certified or not, into the clouds is an emergency, right? So we got in the simulator, since we can't simulate that on the ground, and all the pilots, me included, we crashed that simulator in under a minute. And it was a big shot to the ego. It was a big shot to, well, the simulator's no good. The real thing's a lot different, because our ego's the enemy, right? So we had some TFOs with us, and I saw an opportunity to to make that better through coaching. If you think about what your instrument instructor does while you're getting your instrument rating, they pretty much just sit there and say, check your heading, check your altitude. They're just giving you cues.
Yeah.
So I took the TFOs and I said, hey, how about this? We're going to go back in there. I want you to just talk to the pilot about the airspeed and about the attitude and about the altitude and what we're doing. And they're like, well, what do I say? I don't know. I said, just say whatever, but coach them on what the instruments are saying. And we all went back through there and flew the simulator just fine for over an hour. And the only thing we changed was a crew member, non-aviator, quote unquote, being coaching that pilot through especially the initial onset. So we're a big believer in TFO training. I'm working with Bobby Maker today, sitting across the room, one of our senior training TFOs. He can go get in that helicopter right now and fly it just fine. We know how to do that, but at the same time, we're not like Harold's. Harold's got 2 pilots up there in the front a lot. So if they have a bird strike, there's someone else there. In the U.S., one of the big differences is it's just us 2.
Yeah.
And, we have dual controls in there for training. Some agencies in the U.S. take them out. I'm an advocate of leaving them in. So we train with them in there. The TFO's sitting there. I'm blessed to work for an agency that will pay for any rating that you want. So we have a lot of CFIs, a lot of ATPs that can be given instruction. And it works good for our operation here in the States.
Clay, the training you talked about in the simulator, when you first started doing that, didn't that precede the incident that you have in your class where the aircrew goes into the clouds by just a week or 2?
It wasn't far. That crew had been through that. I don't remember how. It wasn't that big of a gap, but both crew members, we had an inadvertent IMC event during a movement to contact on an armed suspect out in a wooded area, kind of as high stakes as it gets. And as they're moving to contact, they go inadvertent IMC. And that crew cites the training on helping them get through that. Some interesting notes on that. It's talking about auditory exclusion and stress. The pilot's Apple Watch showed a heart rate up in the 170s during the initial onset of this. So those guys did a great thing and they survived it. And we've got the ICS audio of it. So I try to share it in my classes. But again, this is a unique thing, I think, to the U.S. It seems like when I visit with my European partners, they're generally all running big twins with 2 pilots up front, and a TFO or 2 TFOs. I've heard a payload operator and a TFO in the back. So this might be something that's a little more near and dear on the U.S. side.
I want to, Harold, go to you. Talk about your agency and what Clay was describing. How similar is how you guys operate as to what Clay was saying?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
I think we operate 2 types of helicopters. So we have the EC-135. That's main tasking is support and patrol in all kinds of ways. Always, and we have the 139. And the primary task of the 139 is support of police tactical units, quick reaction alert, and special forces with airborne use of force, transportation, and all those kinds of things. So there's a difference. Because of the size of the aircraft, the 139 is always dual pilot with 1 TFO. The 135 is daytime, 1 pilot, 1 TFO. So 1 from 1 in the back. And in nighttime, 2 pilots and 1 TFO. So we always operate with 1 TFO. And depending on the airframe, constantly with 2 pilots or 1 or 2.
So from your perspective, when you're in the 135, and we talked about, or Clay talked about, how they utilize the simulator to train through some of those environments. Talk about how you guys train for those scenarios as a TFO.
We train in the actual aircraft just as training flight. We do combined VFR, IFR training. So what we do, pilots get their IFR tasking, and they have to plan different airports, different approaches, and different kind of things. And in the back, we use that to also see what they do, and check them with if there is an emergency, like it's an engine fire or something, and they have to shut down engine one. We make sure it's engine one, because the stress level is so high. It's just a check, and if it's okay, we say nothing. And if it's like, is that really engine one? Then of course we speak up. So we also, as a TFO, see what the aircraft and what the pilots can do in those circumstances, what happens. But the thing is, I can't get up to front. That's not possible, because of the way the interior is in both types of aircraft, also not in the 135. So you know what's happening, you know what to do. In the 135, I at least can reach the autopilot. So we train that we can at least keep the aircraft flying when the pilot is or incapacitated or something else. And 139, it's always two pilots. So that's the thing. We go there to see what the emergencies are, how they handle it, what we can do, how to support them, and that's how we train it. And we do it in the real aircraft and in the simulator. And in the simulator, you can go beyond what to train in a real aircraft, because with the aircraft we use, it's not allowed to do full auto rotations to the ground. So we have to do it in the simulator.
Harold, have you guys adopted what Clay was talking about as a TFO in the front of the 135, kind of coaching the pilot through an emergency where they're in the clouds unintentionally?
Yeah, it's always when it happens. It's in the 135. It's daytime, and then you forget all the thing about being the TFO, and it's a crew effort, so you have to do it together. So you coach each other and listen extra hard to the radio with ATC and all those kind of things.
Jon, any questions on that before we kind of go into the general role of a TFO?
Yeah, I think it sounds as though the differences in the predominant aircraft type probably leads to a slightly different approach or drives a slightly different approach. Harold, you highlighted use of the autopilot. Autopilot's great for reducing pilot workload, but it's also great for increasing them as well, I find. If you get your fingers in a muddle, or you get a bit of button confusion. But I think the point about the differences between predominantly single, predominantly twin, there's definitely some operational crew sort of SOP differences there that it's interesting. But be really keen to dive a little bit more in depth about the specifics of the TFO's role and the kinds of jobs that predominate.
I know we'll get into the conversation surrounding aircraft types more as we go, but the single engine versus twin engine conversation comes up a lot. And I'll just, I had a conversation recently with an agency on the East Coast of the US that's going away from single engine patrol aircraft to a twin engine patrol aircraft. And I think that's interesting. I think we might see more of that as time goes on. Obviously the big barrier to entry there is a cost, not only the initial purchase price, but the ongoing maintenance costs. But interested to follow that and kind of see where that goes. So we'll circle back and come back into that conversation a bit. But I noticed we're roughly 20 minutes in the conversation. We've talked about a few things, but really haven't talked about what the specific role is of the TFO in the US and in Europe. So if we could, just Clay, could you talk about, for those who may not be familiar with what a tactical flight officer is or does, can you walk through that? And then Harold, I'll ask you to follow Clay up from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our organization and many in the United States, we have a designated role in the aircraft called a tactical flight officer. Some units, they're tactical flight officers and they're pilots. They've come up through both sides and they're familiar with both sides. Some units, pilots are just pilots, TFOs are just TFOs. The TFO in the United States, I believe their job is to provide tactical insight. So they're taking in information from sensors from their eyeballs through NVGs, through multiple radio streams. They're processing that information, hopefully, with a significant street level law enforcement background. So they've been down there on the ground in the middle of it. They're applying that and they're delivering this tactical insight to those on the ground to achieve two objectives. Number one, keep everybody safe. make sure all our officers, our citizens, and finally our suspects go home with all their fingers and toes. And then number 2, catch the bad guy. And that's in the traditional TFO role. We're not talking about search and rescue, aerial use of force, that kind of thing. But whether we're on a fixed wing platform or the helicopter, when we're working calls for our customers on the ground, I believe that's what a TFO is there to do. We're not simply a sensor operator, kind of like an electronic news gathering helicopter that's just taking in images to distribute. We're not generally taking in images and sending them to a command post where the shot caller is, which is very military, right? Where we're these men and women that do this TFO job, in my opinion, have the most task-saturated, difficult job in all of law enforcement when they're doing it well. And I know Harold's one of the finest TFOs I've ever been around. He's incredible, and I think he'll probably have a lot more insight as well and share some of those ideas.
What you brought up, I think, is 100% true. The task saturation on the TFO sites is insane. When Jack talks about the position, he says something that I like. It says the TFO job, when done correctly, is the hardest job in law enforcement. And I 100% agree with that. And I remember in my early goals of going to aviation, I had no idea how hard it was to go up to aviation and be a TFO. The idea was really cool, but you talk about the individual tasks, radio manipulation, radio usage, operating the sensors, commanding and controlling an incident on the ground. Each one of those by themselves is difficult, but combine all 3 of them together at the same time, in addition to some of the other tasks that you're doing kind of unknowingly.
And the thing is, it's you do it all together, but it's also a moving platform. It's not like it's steady on the ground. It's hopping around. It's vibrating like we all know the struggles with neck and back pains. So that's also I think it's a little bit underestimated factor in the job. The rotary wing vibrations, which also come to and give some people a lot of extra stress.
Yeah. Whether you're a pilot or a TFO, that aircraft is spinning in circles. That centrifugal force that's pulling on your neck, on your spine. Add a helmet and some NVGs to that, and the forces are more significant than most people would think. And I know that firsthand, unfortunately, because of the 2 surgeries that I went through. That's a 100% unintended consequence of sitting in, whether that's the pilot seat or the TFO seat, is dealing with those physical ailments that accompany that. But Harold, let's go to you. From your perspective and what you do with your agency, talk about the role of the tactical flight officer within your agency and within your...
I think it's the majority. I think everything Clay already mentioned. We copied the US version of the TFO and did some adapting to the European environment. I think that's, I see Clay nodding. So I think it's because we got our fleet in 2012, and that was the moment we changed working. We went to the US to the LFD crew course. We went to, at that time, Kevin Means in San Diego. We invited Jack and Kevin for a week to do all the pilots and TFOs, give the training. So the suspect training from Jack and Kevin with his tactical flying thing. And that's when we started to work like what TFOs have been doing in the US, I think, for already 25 years. We are lucky that we have a very nice equipment to work with. So that's also interesting because but that's only the tools we use. I think the thing is the same as Clay said. It's officer safety, providing tactical insight, and keeping the officers on the ground, but also the public safe. I think that's the most important thing we do.
Harold, talk about the splitting of the tasks when you're flying, let's say in the 135, and you're supporting operations on the ground. You've got a sensor operator, a camera operator, one in the front, one in the back. Talk about how you split the responsibilities there and what that looks like as compared to what you see in the US.
I think the biggest difference, if it's the 135, it's 2-man crew. So I think it's the same. The only thing is the position. We're sitting front and back instead of next to each other. That I think that's the only difference. And if I look at units like Clay's unit, Texas DPS, I look at San Diego, and look at LAPD, I think they have a very high standard, and especially Clay's department. And I know San Diego, they are also a big fan of using the camera instead of doing the low level flying with binoculars. And that's how we do it. That's how the majority, I think, also of the European units do it. So that's something. I think everything we learned is what we learned from the people in the US, because you guys invented air support for police units like 55 years ago.
Sorry, I just like that differentiation there between the 135 and that's quite interesting to me, because you describe the TFO sitting behind the pilot and the 135, albeit the 135 is a twin and a lot of US agencies are using singles. I'm just curious about what drives the decision to place the TFO in the back there, because you're giving up quite a lot of communication potential, even just to look sideways, out of the corner of your eye or a point at something. Is that driven by the equipment fit in the aircraft? Is that just because there's not enough room in the front to get the various screens?
Yeah, I think we work with a lot of screens, and I know how the A-Star from Clay Lacey is built. Also, they have 1 or 2 small screens in the back. We have 2 17 inches and 1 10 inch, and it all comes to a thing for coordination. And I think it's a European thing. I think we can do the 2-man crew. It's also possible to put a TFO up front, but you have to make a lot of changes. So when we did a midlife upgrade a few years ago, we discussed a lot for the 135 to put a TFO in the front, but we had to make a lot of changes to the aircraft to be able to do the same, or even because the goal was to deliver even better air support to the units on the ground, to change the aircraft so dramatically that it was too expensive, and we had to change the complete way of working. So that's why we stuck. The other thing is, I think European air support units, they buy their aircraft through OEMs. So it's one turnkey solution. The thing is, they provide you with a workstation in the back. That's what Airbus does. That was Leonardo does. And that's what they do for law enforcement. If you see the new one, the H145 for law enforcement, I saw the one for the French Gendarmerie 2 weeks ago. They have a foldable workstation, but it's in the back. So I think the European OEMs also some kind of do it. And if you go like integrators like Babcock or Airborne Technologies, it's always a big mission suite built in the back. So I think it's a European thing. I only know from the Swedish police, they have a TFO front like the US in the Bell 49. So they have a pilot and a TFO in front.
Doesn't INPAS operate with the TFO in the front and the back in the way that Harold's talking about?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they have I think if memory serves, they have a TFO in the front whose primary role is, and I just know I'm going to get this backwards, and I'm going to get so much feedback because we have. I
will help you, Joe. It's an observer in front.
Yes, please.
Operating the camera, and the TFO is in the back, and he is the mission commander, and he can take over even the camera if he thinks that's the shot I want to make, or that's what we have to. That's so they have like a camera observer in front and the TFO in the back.
Harold, what are the pros and cons that you see with the division of tasking that you just described?
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
And I think I'm not a good judge on it because I never flew with Clay, I never flew with Jet, I've never sat on the left seat. So I have no idea. When I came, I started in the back and I'm teaching guys from the back and I'm learning how to work in the back of the aircraft. But I've never been up front, so I have no idea what the differences are.
Clay, I'll go to you here in a second, but I'll just throw my 2 cents in. You talk about the task saturation that takes place as a TFO. The part of what I like of what you're describing with INPAS is the separation of some of those duties. What I find challenging is being able to communicate what 2 different people are seeing and how that effectively gets down to the ground. But Clay, for you, based on your travels and your conversations with the folks, what do you see as the pros and cons to what Harold's described within his own agency, and then also what we're describing with the TFO in the front and in the back?
Well, I don't have as much of an opinion on what they're doing in Europe, other than to say we operate our fixed wing with a pilot in the front and a TFO in the back. So we're doing missions out of the fixed wing that way. I'm with Harold. I think a lot of what drives this big twin engine thing is Europe. It's regulation, it's rules. You have to be in those aircraft. And for me, this is just the Clay opinion. Here in the United States, we don't have a bunch of A-stars or Bell 407s falling out of the sky due to engine failures. That's not how we kill ourselves. I think the money could be better spent on filling up that water bottle. I teach human performance. It's a water bottle. How do we keep the bottle full of water? Because that TFO is about to start pouring that water out into tasks. And at some point, the water's gone. And then a new task comes in and they have to take from somewhere else. So training, equipment. Now I don't have to use a lot of human performance to do these basic things. So it gives me a lot more human performance to do other things. So I think largely what I've seen in Europe is they are operating at almost like a Part 135 carrier would operate in the United States. And we're not here. We're operating public use in Part 91, generally speaking. And that provides, in my opinion, sufficient flexibility to choose different airframes for different missions. And from an economic standpoint, fly more hours and provide more service. Do I think you can do it either way? Absolutely. If you've ever come to my class, I always say this isn't the way, it's a way. Harold's over there putting a lot of bad guys in jail, just like we are here. So I think it's important to draw distinctions, but also understand that both of these models, in my opinion, are equally successful.
Absolutely. I love, Harold, what you talked about, how your agency decided we're going to spend the money, we're going to go LAPD, and we're going to look for a way, like Clay just talked about, to do things that might supplement how we're currently doing it. Talk about the shift in, I don't want to say mindset, but the shift in the application of the TFO after going to LAPD. What did you guys do prior to, and what did you guys change after?
It's a shame Jack is not here, because it was really a week of fun, because we got the Jack tour instead, the complete course. But the reason was because he was 2 months before we went there. He did a week in my unit, so we had his complete training already. So we did some other things, went to SWAT, did some things with the bomb squad, those kind of things. But the thing with Kevin and Jack, and I think Clay totally agrees. Jack is classes. Jack is the master of suspect tactics. That's amazing. The thing we adopted from Kevin Means was camera angles, altitude, and speed. Because, suddenly in 2012 we got a new fleet. We got very sophisticated equipment. But before that, it was my unit we had the BO-105s, and it was flying in call. So no patrol, flying in call. Now we all know when you fly and they call you, then you have to go. We cover the entire country. I know, Clay, it's very small. It's like the size of New Hampshire, but we cover the entire country. But the thing is, you're always late. So it's the majority of call was gone on arrival, because it's like 40 minutes or 45 minutes to the other side of the country. So we're always late. And that's when they started to say we need a new fleet. And the idea was to have some satellites. So we have 3 locations in the Netherlands where we have an aircraft now. So we can pretty much cover the entire country and fly within 20 minutes. If we're at base and do refueling, it's 20 minutes. But when we're up there, it's like the same in the US, same in the UK. If you're up there, you're always faster and you will catch the gas. So after the LAPD course, the training we had from Jack and from Kevin, we chased our way. So we got the money for flying patrol. And ever since we are flying patrol, so normal shift for me is like, we make 9-hour shifts. So it's in the morning from 7 till 4, in the afternoon from 2 to 11, and the night shift is from 10 to 7 during the night. Except from the nighttime, but every shift you fly at least 2 missions of 1.5 or 2 hours, so you fly the 1-3 night. So you fly at least 3 or 4 hours a shift. That's planned. So outside those hours, something comes up, you go again. So that's how we work now, and it brought us a lot. And of course, with all the UAV stuff coming in and thinking about hybrid systems and working together in the same mission and operation, we're working on a vision towards 2035, also of fleet renewal and those kinds of things. And maybe we should, Clay knows I'm a fan, but maybe we should look into fixed wing again. So to have like 2 fixed wings as an overhead platform like they do in Texas DPS. And if they see we need a helicopter, especially in the bigger cities, because if you have to follow and you have a pursuit, and it's hit a city with the narrow streets, and you need a helicopter instead of fixed wing because you can make a turret with a fixed wing. And also, I think Jon can agree, the cloud base in Europe is not always the best one. So that's also an issue.
The shift in paradigm, I think, from the reactive flights to proactive flights changes everything.
Yeah.
And my agency, we did that. And the benefits that come with that are huge. So I want to come back to that idea. Also, the idea of mixed fleet of fixed wing helicopters and drones. Texas, Clay, you guys are doing a phenomenal job there. Phoenix PD is doing a great job of integrating the fixed wing assets there as well. I had really good conversations with them when we had a chance to visit. But Jon, I know you've got a question, so we'll go to you before we come back to some of these other concepts.
Yeah, thanks. It's probably one that, since you mentioned you were going to come on to patrol, but I'll take the opportunity to steal your sandwiches now and ask it anyway. A just really interesting point that you make, Harold, about going from reactive tasking to proactive patrol. And I wonder whether, so I know there are, having written a few features now on US law enforcement agencies, I know that there is a difference in approach to this. And I just wonder whether there is a difference that you've observed between the way that you've experienced your proactive patrolling, given the size and the geography and everything else, versus in the States, where obviously the geography is different and the jurisdiction boundaries and the politics around that may be slightly different. Kind of double-pronged question. What are the main differences in terms of how that plays out with regard to actually being able to do the proactive patrolling, being given the authorization or the money or whatever it takes to do the proactive patrolling? But then the second question is like, how do you, given that you're now going to do proactive patrol, how do you decide where to patrol? Because that strikes me that's a really complex problem.
It's an interesting question. How do you decide where to patrol? Because with a limited amount of hours to have per shift, we did some testing with the Technical University a few years ago, and they got all the data from the police cons over the past 5 or 6 years. They did an analysis, and they said, and it's not rocket science, because we all know on a Thursday, on a Tuesday, on a Friday, on a Saturday evening, it's busy. Also the nights. On a Sunday morning, it's not. So why plan 3 shifts in a Sunday morning? If you know it's like from Thursday to Saturday night, it's very busy, and you need all the shifts to cover at least the area of interest. And what the study showed us was there is an area in the Netherlands which is always very busy, and it's also the most dense populated area of the Netherlands. So it's between if you have the map of the Netherlands, I know it's very small, it's like an island, but if you have Rotterdam, you go from Rotterdam up to Alkmaar and then to the east side to the German border. It's a triangle, and that's where the majority of our calls is. So what you see that we have always 1 or 2 aircraft in that area, and for the rest of the Netherlands, we have 1 in the south part and 1 in the northern part. But it's not like they committed a crime at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning there, so they're gonna do it in 3 weeks again. That's not predictable. Certain things you can predict, but I think you cannot predict. Look at Paris, what happened last night. You can predict that somebody's breaking into the Louvre. So it has been done, but nobody could predict it's going to. So it's very interesting. So what you see, when we're up there, we're listening to the police radios. We have a system where we can see all ongoing police calls in the entire country. and we can look into that call. So like a dispatcher, and we can see which cars are going there, which officers are going there, and it gives you geolocation, and we can send that geolocation directly into our flight management system and in our mapping system. So we have, we can also like pre-scan the area on the map. The pilot knows where to go because he has a mission target point in his FMS, and we can work the call so we can see what's happening while en route. So that's a big advantage. So we can choose. But there's also, we work like we are federal, so we have one nationwide dispatch room who controls the helicopters, and they also scan all the incidents of interest. But also units, when you overfly, they hear you, hey, here it comes, Clay, Zulu. Can you help us? Because we have a call going on and we know you're here. And it can easily be like there's a child gone 5 years old and he ran away for 2 minutes ago and we rose our head. So it's a constant play of watch your calls, listen to the radios, and get directions from a dispatcher.
Clay, from you guys' perspective, I'd imagine you guys use a lot of data-driven ways of identifying where you're going to spend time. Can you kind of piggyback on what Harald talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'd comment on additionally, 95% of our flights are not for the Texas DPS. Our customers are the local, state, federal partners that don't have air assets or their air assets are busy. So we aggressively go out and work with these customers to teach them suspect behavior, containment, and then the way it works is the agencies that have aggressive police leadership that actually want to go out and put bad guys in jail, set perimeters, send canine teams, we hang out there because just honestly, that's where the success is. The agencies that are checking a box by calling us with no perimeter, no dog, no anything else, we're not as successful there. I say it all the time. Solid patrol perimeters catch bad guys, not the aircraft. Right. We're just a cog in that wheel. And here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, you have different law enforcement philosophies between agencies that are very, very different. And we can't care more about an agency's event than they do. So even if it's a significant event that we would really spend the whole day on, if they're going to give it 20 minutes, then they're going to give it 20 minutes. So in addition to what Harald said, I think for air units, we are the subject matter experts in manhunts, in vehicle pursuits. No one works more than we do. If we can get into these agencies and teach them what success looks like, how to chase to contain, how to mitigate the risks associated with vehicle pursuits by using an airborne asset, then these patrol flights supporting that customer become much more effective.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Whether it's you as I'll say me in this case, as an Ontario TFO or pilot, going to an Ontario briefing and talking to the ground personnel about the best practice way of integrating with air support, how we can best help them, and all those best practice conversations are huge. Clay, I know you guys do that a lot. Being on the same page with ground personnel, I think, is one of the most important pieces to the puzzle. Harald, I'm curious for you guys, being a national or federal agency, it's challenging, I'd imagine, to get into to train these folks that you're working with day in and day out. But what does that look like for you guys to get on the same page? Thank you to our sponsor, Centum. Airborne operators know that every second counts. LifeSeeker is a powerful phone location tool helping search and rescue teams and law enforcement agencies locate missing persons faster, even in the toughest conditions. With hundreds of successful missions every year and proven reliability, LifeSeeker is trusted by public safety agencies worldwide. Want to improve your operations? Learn more at Centum.com.
It's the training because it's like the Netherlands. It has like 12 forces. So like every province has their own force, and it's very hard to instruct them all. So we try to go to the police academies and at least to officers who are almost done with the academy to tell them what we can do, how they can help us so that we can help them, and also to tell them what we can't do, because they think, oh, they come with a helicopter, have the magic camera, and it's done. It's a done deal. That's not what it is. So we try to train them, but the thing is, also in the police academies, there's a limited time for us to go there, because they already have a very tight schedule in order to get them as soon as possible on the streets as a working officer. So the other thing is, our main base is in Amsterdam on the international airport. So the colleagues from the area of Amsterdam, of The Hague, they can come over and they can talk to us like, can you tell us something about that? The thing is staffing. So we don't have enough staff to go to all the units or to all the interested units to tell them how we work and what we're going to do. So the idea now is to see if there's something like, we can create something like a very basic e-learning that they can open it and see, okay, I want a helicopter. What can they do? What can't they do? Can I call them? Or what can I do before I even call? Because it's a limited asset. And if you only have 2 up there and there are like 10 or 12 calls at the same time where a helicopter can be an extra add-on, you have to make it. We also have to choose where we go. And that's a hard part. So the training the ground officers is really a hard part to reach them. And if you like, Jack always said, go to a roll call and just tell them in 30 minutes. You can do it if like you own the helicopter, in that city owns the helicopter and you're part of that city. The thing is, we are working nationwide, and so it's an issue. We try to go sometimes in the weekends, just call like a police station somewhere in the northern part of the country. Hey, do you have space for a helicopter to land? Why? We want to come tell you in 35 minutes what we do, how we can help you, and how you can help us. Because the majority of people, they never think of a helicopter, and they haven't worked with a helicopter. So they also don't see the danger of a helicopter when we land. And because it's police patrolling, so we go there, so you have to teach them. But it's really hard to teach them and to tell them all. So the people you work a lot with is the areas around our main base in Amsterdam, and the 2 bases in Rotterdam, and the one at the Vogel Air Base in the southern part. So they know it because we're always there. But the other parts, it's challenging.
What's interesting is, with the advent of these types of meeting platforms, Zoom, Riverside, all these different platforms where we can kind of meet virtually now. I've talked about taking advantage of those as an aircrew as much as possible. Calling into roll call or briefing, because most roll call facilities have the ability to take those, so you can call in and be a part of those. So I think that while we can't always be there physically, at least a virtual presence is great to get the conversation going.
I'm going to write it down. That's a good one.
I'm kind of a mutual understanding of what we're talking about. John, I know you had a question, so I'll go to you.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry. The risk of kind of just capitalizing the whole thing. But I'm just really curious about this, because Harald and Clay as well, you've both mentioned, if not explicitly, that the end user of this information, the end beneficiary of this information, assuming that you are going out to catch a suspect, and we can't really call them a beneficiary of that. So let's say that the beneficiary are the folks on the ground, right? They're the people who you're actually trying to enable to get the job done. And Harald, you mentioned sort of a degree of training and a degree of becoming conversant with lots of different TTPs and SOPs across lots of different organizational boundaries, Clay. And I imagine the same is true given the number of different agencies that you said you work with. And I wonder the extent to which there is a need to explain to those agencies the capabilities and limitations of the aircraft and its sensors. And so in my experience, back flying with the military, it was quite common for people to know that they needed a helicopter, but not what they needed the helicopter to do. And whether it was because they were box ticking, like you mentioned, Clay, or whether it was just because they were in a bit of a difficult spot and they felt they needed air support because they knew it would bring something, it's often, or at least in my experience, it's often been the case that people don't know precisely what it is that helicopter is going to bring. And they may also not appreciate, to your points earlier on, the workload involved in being in that aircraft, and the fact that as soon as you get on scene, they've been there. They may have been there for an extended period of time. They're completely, they've got their mental model from the ground about what they believe is happening. You arrive in a helicopter, and the assumption is as soon as you arrive, you know everything that they do. That may not be the case. So instantly, you become this, you become the oracle, and your workload goes up as well. So I'll get to asking a question at the end of this sort of diatribe, but is there a sense that the better the folks on the ground know the helicopter's capability and limitations and how you do your job, what you're there to do, the better able they are to employ it? And do you get the impression that there is a difference between Europe and the US in terms of the number of different agencies that you have to provide that training across? In essence, a qualitative and a quantitative difference.
Oh, well, I don't mind starting. For Texas, 254 counties, lots of cities. We have a lot of customers. What I would say is, while it's important that the ground units know what our capabilities are, what's more important is that they understand suspect behavior and containment. The more they understand about holding a scene and keeping the suspect contained, the better, because then we go arrest the suspect on our terms, with a K9, with an armored personnel carrier, with a SWAT team, with whatever. So I find that you get a lot more bang for the buck by teaching them suspect behavior, perimeter containment, and then they just watch the show. And what I mean by that is, you come in, you start detailing, painting that picture. A good TFO is patient. They're thorough. They're painting a picture for an individual on the ground that they can see in their mind's eye. And as that happens, they start kind of understanding, wow, they really can see a thermal signature from someone leaning up against a wall or whatever it is. I don't think for the limited time you get in a classroom with them, teaching them thermal imagery and multicasting on different police radios provides as much bang for the buck as it does to teach them we can still go chase bad guys. This is how we do it, even with the politics going on in the United States and in different agencies that are more or less aggressive. We can teach some tactics that are universally accepted, and the apprehensions go up.
But before Harold goes, I'll just kind of piggyback on what you said, Clay. Is what you said is critically important. Whether the aircraft is there or not, that base knowledge of how to contain a scene, an incident, is the fundamental building block you need to be successful. If that aircraft is there, the odds of that apprehension goes up dramatically. But even if that aircraft is not, you've got a good containment, your odds are still much higher. So love that you brought that up. That's a great point. Harold, we'll go to you.
It's interesting because Clay is talking about suspect tactics. I know. I have two daughters working also with the police. There is no academy in the Netherlands teaching officers suspect tactics. I think from your own experience, Jon, Clay, the only thing they teach you how to defend yourself, how to use your sidearm, how to use everything, your handcuffs and all the things, what you can and can do, but they don't teach you suspect tactics. And I think if you understand suspect tactics, you can take advantage of it in your own tactics. And you can, there it comes, I'm only from Clay, the OODA loop. And you can hack into that OODA loop from the suspect. But if you have no clue how suspects behave, because I saw it in the US, Clay saw it in Europe, it's an international language. They all do the same thing. And it doesn't matter where they are, if they are in South America, if they are in Alaska, if they are in Europe, they all do the same thing. They want to get away, and they all have the same tactics because it's an animal instinct instead of, and they teach each other in jail, and they teach each other by all the television programs we make. But I think if you want to reach the officers on the ground, we have to start teaching them suspect tactics in basic training. And that's where we try to put on some units with Jack's class or put them to Clay's class. That's the idea. But the thing is, commanders from patrol units in big cities or small cities, they don't see the point. So why should we send people there? Because it's a lot of money, and what do I gain from it? So the thing is, we have to make them see that they need to train the people in suspect tactics, because if they are trained in suspect tactics, the helicopter is really an extra asset, and it can do what they think it can. But if they don't know that, they think we can do everything, and it's a big bump to them that sorry, we can't see through the trees because it's too dense. So I wrote down your ID, John, about briefing via Teams and Zoom. I'm going to introduce it because I think that's the way for us. If you do it nationwide, at least to be able to be visible to them, especially for the units we don't go often, and they see us, and we can do it even from the hangar and just tell them in 30 minutes, hey, what's this? And then you can make it like 2 or 3 times a year and stack up the ID from suspect tactics. So we start basic, this is the helicopter, this is what we have, this is what we can, or this, especially this is what we can do. And then start them training in like what Clay also is the roving thing and those kind of things. But you have to train them. And I think the lack is, again, they don't know anything about suspect tactics. And you can blame them because they never thought of it. They aren't trained to do it. So I think that's a common thing in the US. That's a common thing in the US and in Europe.
Yeah, for sure. I think the opposition to the adoption of the training is a bit of a challenge as well. Clay, from your perspective, in the conversations you've had with folks who are asking, hey, justify this training to me. Why should my folks sit in your class? To me, it's obvious. And I think to most of us that are listening to the podcast, it's plainly obvious. I mean, we're talking about the effective capturing of bad people. You know, I think that's what we're looking to benefit from. But talk about give some folks some advice on how they could help justify, you know, the cost of this training that you're talking about and the importance of doing that. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers. Thank you to our sponsor, Centum. Airborne operators know that every second counts. LifeSeeker is a powerful phone location tool helping search and rescue teams and law enforcement agencies locate missing persons faster, even in the toughest conditions. With hundreds of successful missions every year and proven reliability, LifeSeeker is trusted by public safety agencies worldwide. Want to improve your operations? Learn more at Centum.com.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Thank you for joining us for this 2-part international series of the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasting in partnership with Vertical Valor magazine. We had the pleasure of talking with Hangar Z co-hosts and international instructors, Harald Brink, Chief TFO from the Dutch National Police, and Lieutenant Clay Lacey from Texas DPS. We also spoke with Jon Duke, a UK military aviation veteran and contributor to Vertical Valor and Vertical magazines. We explored the similarities and critical differences in air support operations between the US and Europe, from recognizing suspect behavior to discussing the intense task saturation faced by TFOs. We also highlighted the importance of simulator training and the tactical advantages of flying both single-engine and twin-engine helicopters. Don't forget to check out Jon Duke's article, Aerial Pursuit Across Continents, which further expands on these incredible conversations. You can find it in the fall issue of Vertical Valor magazine at verticalmag.com. Thank you for being a part of this conversation today, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Hangar Z podcast.